Our countermeasures will be introduced in 2 steps, starting with April 1st and fully in place as of April 13th. In the meantime, we will always remain open to negotiations.
Alongside, as a reaction to Donald Trump's foreign policy, European leaders have agreed to massively increase their defense spendings in the next few years. Germany's leaders are planning to increase their share for defense by changing the country's constitution, which is a very significant and rare measure. Germany's Chancellor-in-waiting, Friedrich Merz, announced plan to effectively exempt defense spending from the country's constitutional fiscal restraints. Merz proposed exempting defense spending above 1% of GDP from Germany's constitutional debt brake, which typically limits the budget deficit to 0.35% of the GDP. And joining us with more is DW correspondent Thomas Sparrow in Berlin. Hello, Thomas. How is Germany planning to amend the constitution, and what is the reaction from the people?
Essentially, Germany has had for a long time, you mentioned that in your introduction, this debt brake, which essentially meant that the government was not allowed to borrow money, not only for defense, but also for infrastructure. The argument back then was that it was important to be fiscally responsible. But obviously, the mood has changed as part of the ongoing war in Ukraine, as part of the instability also that comes specifically from the United States and the new government there of Donald Trump. And the idea that European leaders have to basically have a little bit more independence from the United States when it comes to defense. Now, Germany, in order to have more money, needs to borrow money. And that's why it essentially needs to change that debt brake, which is in the German constitution. In other words, it needs a 2/3 majority in parliament to be able to really amend it. And the current leaders, so basically not only those who are now in government, but also some that will be probably in government when the new parliament comes in at the end of the month, are actually planning to do that as quickly as possible to guarantee that 2/3 majority. It's not a given that it will happen, but it is certainly something that Friedrich Merz, you mentioned him, Germany's next chancellor, the chancellor-in-waiting, let's say, certainly expects, because that's the way in which he will have more money to spend on defense and infrastructure. And many in Germany are actually on board with that. According to a recent survey, in fact, a majority do want Germany to spend more both on defense and on infrastructure. And they're also in favor of this change to the constitution in order to basically have a different idea of what the debt brake means.
And if the increased defense budget does work out, in principle, do we know how the government plans to use the increased defense funds specifically?
There's a long shopping list. If you speak to politicians in the German parliament, not far away from where we are standing, they will mention all sorts of priorities that they believe are important for the German military, not only when it comes to the capabilities specifically in the German military, but also, for example, when it comes to the German military presence in other parts of the world. One concrete example in the Baltic state in NATO's eastern flank. But it's not only about defense, it's not only about the military, especially for some of the opposition parties in parliament. It's important that the increase in defense also comes hand in hand with an increase in infrastructure. And we're talking here about roads, about bridges, about schools, hospitals, etc., which is a big problem in Germany and a big priority also for many voters. So what you will probably see in the next few days, also in the next few weeks, is a very interesting debate in the country, not only about how to use that new money in terms of defense, but also how to use that new money as well in terms of infrastructure.
Thomas, thank you for those updates. Steel plays a key role in Indian economy. Union Minister of State for Heavy Industries and Steel, B.S. Verma, on Wednesday launched the Steel Research and Tech Mission of India, SRTMI, web portal in New Delhi. DD India correspondent Vishal Baristo caught up with the Secretary, Ministry of Steel, at the event and talked about the benefits of the scheme, production of green steel, and the impact of US tariffs on steel exports from India.
If India is to become 5 trillion economy, then steel is going to play a major role. I have with me Secretary Steel. Let's talk to him and find out. Sir, the GDP of India and the